Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and unicorns. Thank you so much for inviting me into your browser tab or device of choice. Apparently, there are 5 concurrent viewers, so apparently I've gone viral now, and by viral I mean I've caught a cold. Well, not quite. As you can see, I tried to gussy up a little bit here my stream with a fancy border and overlay. So I'm trying to be all cool today. So let me see the chat. I saw something with sound. Yes, working sound. Is it possible? It is. I don't know why, but sound apparently is working. Yeah, let's knock on wood because I'm not quite sure for how long it is working. Just let me know if the sound levels drop, because in that case I can just quickly bump them up again. I'm not quite sure if I resolved the issue now, but I'm hopeful because I didn't permit anything to interfere with anything else, which means Windows will probably do anyway. So yeah, just let me know if the sound is dropping. Okay, today I thought after playing all of your wonderful games to finish it off, let's play my little horrible accident that is Thanks for Nothing. And I thought, yeah, just show you the game if you haven't played it and try to justify myself. And when that's not enough for you, we'll have a look at my Unity code, at my C# code. Yeah, I used to program in Unity a little bit. I did this one tutorial on lens flares where I made extensive use of scriptable objects. But the last time that I really did something with Unity was over a year ago back, and I was all in the mindset of game maker. In other words, you're free to laugh at my implementations in Unity and yeah, tell me how to do things better. Because there are a lot of things that I just barely managed to get to work. And yeah, from the content, I had a lot of more content there. Just a glimpse of all my great ideas I had for this Ludum, which, yeah, wasn't able to implement. Okay, so let's switch over to this wonderful mode here, if it's working. Apparently it's working. And let's have a look at the chat and see, yeah, there are still people around, and YouTube tells me to capture top moments, new, create a highlight video. Yeah, I don't know how this works. So yeah, this is my game Thanks for Nothing, and you can see from the screenshots there, yeah, it's very bare bones in terms of visual presentation, but again, I was lucky to manage to finish with something. Okay, so you probably all have played the game, and if not, look at this, it got a little icon there. Isn't this cute? Yeah. So let's play it in the graphics quality ugly AF. And what I also like about Unity is that it identifies my 3 monitor setup as display 1, right, display 2, and display 3, right. So we're going to play this on my center screen, which is display 1, right. Well, so I hope it's big enough that you can read it still in this little overlay thingy, but apparently it is. So, okay, so there's sound. I hope you can hear some sound now of the game. Well, is there sound? Yeah, now there should be sound. Okay, so the year is 20XX. Earth is nothing more than a huge dust bowl on one half and an endless ocean of toxic water on the other, with not much left worth living. Yeah, I drew all those little graphics there the old-fashioned way, that is ink on paper, and then just took pictures with my phone and brought them into Photoshop and then Unity. And for the Earth here, I painted it, of course, inverted. So everything that is bright here, I drew that was dark. Yeah, probably making it sound more interesting than it actually is. Okay, so but that doesn't mean there's nobody around. Far from it. Actually, just nobody you want to spend the rest of your days with, or even another minute. And already you can see strained attempts at humor and jokes and trying to make the thing funny. As I will lay out in my LD45 postmortem quite a bit, is that I wanted, if I didn't make something that's moody as I always did, I try to make it funny. And yeah, this is my rather ham-fisted approach of trying to have at least one joke or one thing that's funny or surreal or just weird in each page of dialogue that's being displayed there. And now, with nothing else to do, a bunch of unhinged professors really did it. They created a bundle of pure nothing, a perfect specimen of lack thereof, the eponymous antimatter. Why? Well, why the hell not? And this is the first joke, meta joke on what I'm doing is darkness, all-engulfing darkness, is that I'm using always this phrase to start my text adventures with. I don't know why, but yeah, apparently I started doing things and now it's kind of stuck, and this is my way of making fun of myself. There's something on the chat happening. I don't think game sound is coming through. It's not. Let me pump up the audio again and click into it. Yeah, with Unity it's only playing audio when the window is active, so let me know if the audio levels are okay of me justifying myself and the game playing. If not, you're not missing too much, just a little bit of guitar strumming there. Darkness, all-engulfing darkness. No wait, that's just the inside of your eyelids. Haha, I'm so funny. Wake up when I'm talking to you, you idiot! Insulting the player, always a great way to start off with. It's there now, maybe a bit quiet, but it's there. Okay, so I bump up the audio even further because I try to keep the audio in-game quiet, because sometimes I've noticed with games that where the audio was just all over the place and it was clipping, and this is why I tried with my Unity implementation to keep it at 6, that's the German word for 6 decibels below 0, so that it just there was nothing that would be clipping. Okay, fracking unbelievable, the stereotypical scientist mutters, turning to the other egghead. Can you believe this? I can. You too think you can believe whatever they are talking about, but you're not sure whether you understood the question right. Haha, funny. Do you comprehend anything of what I just told you? And we have here two lines of branching dialogue that is no or you smell funny. Let's go with you smell funny, which changed absolutely nothing. And you found nobody else for the run? Does this bozo look like my best choice, Kareem? While the two argue, you enjoy the color of the other scientist's shoes. So the point here is you're being thrown into your big adventure, and yeah, instead of the usual stereotype of being the player, the one that saves everything, you're just some random idiot that they managed to get for whatever their intentions are. While the two argue, you enjoy the color of the other scientist's shoes. There's nothing in your bag, got it? Nothing! Bring it to the Rocketeer. Yeah, my way of making things look important is taking a hint of the big JRPGs, or even the small ones that put stuff into brackets and a different color, because yeah, this is what Japanese games do. You nod. Finally! Perhaps we should go ourselves next time. There won't be a next time. They glare at you. Now get going, you! And there we are. Welcome to an unforgiving world you are utterly ill-equipped to face. Yeah, trying to up the stakes there because there's not much game. Oh, I'm sorry. Spoiler alert, there's not much game. Who's left is crazy in their own ways. The scientists are egomaniacal, the outlaws are ruthless, and the rocket riders are ignorant, and you got nothing in your pockets. Nothing. You think you'll make it? And you can either select I'm in danger, chuckle, I like that, or on second thought, so let's say I'm in danger, I like it. Now that's the spirit, I knew you would feel right at home. I knew it since I first saw you. You're the right type, very sturdy. Yeah, the other thing is a narrator of the game that's not as much impartial to everything, but has an opinion of their own, whoever they might be, because I also find this very funny. So there's the Wilderness manual that is WAS to move, space, or E to interact, 1, 2, or 3 for the dialogue choices. Apparently you know this already. Also, there won't be a 3 dialogue choice because I didn't have time to come up with 3 different choices for dialogues. And escape to leave everything behind, which is close the game out, right? And stay safe. So here we are, showing the player what's important. Heresy. I would never do that. Oh, Frank. Yeah, Frank is the one, if you don't know, who's always making these text adventure games in Inform, and which I also tried myself, Inform, because of Frank, and I didn't quite get the hang of it. But yeah, I think this is why I stuck to doing the easy stuff, that is trying to get things to work with Unity. Okay, I tried to move my mouse pointer out of the way, and once we start moving there, you can see that yeah, the camera is parented to the player, because this is my very simple and very workable way of doing a camera movement in Unity when you have never quite scripted camera movement in Unity. Okay, so my assumption as a game designer, la-di-da, was that the player would just go around and the first thing that they would encounter would be this thing here. And the game teaches you to interact with E or space, and now you put the rock in your bag, but as you look into it, there's still nothing. Oops, better be careful then. So this was my assumption, that players now know that whatever they put in their bag, yeah, it's still nothing, because they're carrying around nothing. And so they start out with nothing. So, oh yeah, I should have mentioned the theme of this Ludum Dare was start with nothing, and yeah, this was my rather direct approach of approaching this. So here we got our first NPC, the Red Hermit, and I had plans to yeah, have a little nod or a character NPC to some or even most of my patrons that I would manage to, and it turns out it was just one. So yeah, this will also be clear that in the Ludum Dare post-mortem to this, but yeah, I'm sorry that it's just one of my patrons is there. The Red Hermit, by the way, he will also share his dialogue lines with another NPC that is none of my patrons. There has been a rock slide. I don't think you will be able to make it through. Bummer. Okay, so there is a rock slide with a couple of rock jokes, depending on which rock the game deems the one that you interact with first. So yeah, there is just, once you're colliding with anything, it just picks the first collision and reads or displays its item name. And in this case, it's a very dense sand. Yeah, I tried to come up with very funny synonyms for rocks. So Dwayne Johnson, haha, another rock, and a piece of cliff, a large pebble, a boulder, very dense sand, and yeah, there aren't enough jokes for the amount of rocks that we have. So we cleared the rock slide, and the Red Hermit now says, oh wow, looks like the path is cleared now. Oh my god. Yeah, no proofreading whatsoever. Here's a token of my gratitude. The Red Hermit hands you a priceless gem. You put it in your bag. There's still nothing in your bag, and this is... So, congratulations, this is the one joke. And if you roam around here and you notice there is another NPC, it's a very thick pony. And it's a play on words that the pony is not very intelligent, so it's a pretty thick pony. By the way, what I'm very proud of is, if you can see this, you're flipping back and forth what's in background here with the pony and in foreground. When we'll look at the code, I will show you the line of code that I came up with, and by came up with I mean that I took from Stack Overflow, or I think the Unity forums for this yeah, background foreground flipping. Okay, so let's talk to the flipping pony. And it says, I think I had too much oatmeal, the pony tells you with watery eyes, but before you can make up your mind about what to do, a stream of pony vomit, or pomit, as I like to call it, erupts in your general direction. With a swift move you hold up your bag, and nothing holds it back. Phew. And that was the joke. So this is not a dialogue, this is very linear, as we will see when I show you how my dialogue system implementation works. Yeah, this was implemented in the last 20 minutes of the jam, and yeah, it shows. So the only dialogue that would really react to the player we just saw was with the Red Hermit, when this guy would remark upon if you cleared all the rocks. Everything is hard-coded there and rather, yeah, blatantly ugly. There's a pill there, because reasons, and if you pick it up, it displays a joke. Now that's where the Pill Collider 2D really shines. You put it in your bag. Yes, some text boxes you have to click away, to click that they go away, and some text boxes are go away after a couple of seconds. Yeah, not too good. But look, now I'm in the back of this little twig, and now I'm in the front. Ha 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 ha. Yeah. And this is a stand-in character, but I wanted to draw a very distinct face with a nice jawline, and in the end I overdid it and it looked like a skull, so I just kept it. And yeah, this actually is just one of those things that I thought, yeah, I will change this when I have time. You never change things in a postmortem, in a jam. It's Mr. Scully! And Mr. Scully says, it's dangerous to go alone. Take this. And he hands you a wooden sword. And you put it in your bag, but there's still nothing in your bag. Yeah, this was the joke. The joke was, I know Legend of Zelda. Yeah, sorry. And if you do this again, yeah, he won't remember that he handed you anything. The good thing is, the game will remember what he gave you, and it's a list. It's a list structure, and at least I make sure that things don't get to the list when they are already in there. And by things I mean literal strings. Look at this, there's something else. It's a T-block, your favorite Tetris block, the ideal starter kit for a grand pyramid. Just don't put it on your... oh, too late. And there's another object there, it's a Game Boy. Would have been a good travel mate if you had had batteries for it. It would have helped further if you hadn't put it in your bag with your nothing. And I think there's everything there is, because once we start to talk with this NPC, the Rocketeer, the game will end. And there's also a rocket ship which we can interact with, that is just look at it and looks as if there's nothing amiss. Wink wink, nudge nudge, it's a play on words again. Yeah, and there's a literal Easter egg there. I ran out of ideas. Hidden in plain sight, but still you found it. Good for you, I wouldn't eat it though. And another thing that's very inconsistent is, look at this, there are some crates there. What can you do with the crates? Nothing, you can collide with the crates, and same thing here with those rock thingies there. What's up with those little trees or twigs or whatever this is? Yeah, it's, you can be in the foreground of them or in the background, and yeah, same thing with the rocket. Yeah, you can tell that I'm really proud that I managed to find a couple of lines that helps me flip this around. Okay, so we pretty much collected everything there is. Now let's talk to the Rocketeer. Now look at you, what a sturdy frame you have there. I hope you got something in your bag for me. This baby won't start by itself. She purrs and pets the rusty rocket shell. Yeah, onward. Oh, and now we can hand her nothing. She leers at it, nothing in her hands. And if you weren't creeped out already, you'd be now. Especially after the look she shoots as nothing plunges in a rocket's tank. So it's the nothing. You get it by now. The Rocketeer climbs up to the cockpit, cackling like crazy. Well, not just like crazy. It sounds very much like the real deal. And before she closes the scuttle, she screams at the top of her lungs, "So long, suckers!" Ain't she a darling? The Rocketeer flips the switch, but instead of the expected grand takeoff scene with trumpets by John Williams, the ignition cuffs like an asthmatic Roomba before dying. The moment you wonder whether that was all, something happens. Yeah, the image pretty much gives it away. That something is an explosion that you will tell your grandchildren about, provided your productive organs weren't harmed by it, which is unlikely. From the ball of fire and muted curses explodes a sheer endless stream of things. And there we go, this is the list of strings that the game remembered. A specific rock, a priceless gem, a slush of oatmeal, a giant pill, a wooden sword, a tetromino. This is why I never make videos about Tetris, because I don't nail the pronunciation of tetromino. Tetris block, a Game Boy, an Easter egg, and an entire freaking rock slide! Exclamation point. Future generations will dig up fragments of what you had shoved into your bag that day and laugh. There's a period missing. And laugh at your expense, I think, but the text box is not tall enough. Yeah. Miraculously, you'll survive it as you just sit there trying to hum a tune in the same key as your tinnitus. A scorched little bundle with one hell of an upside down smile crawls up to you, barely conscious. Oh, hi, Rocket Lady. You just had to play with it, you moron. All I ever wanted was to leave this place. You look around to hide from this awkward situation, but your polluted nothing did a good job of flattening at least 2 square miles. Thanks for nothing. Now come closer, I want to slap you. Politely, you lean in closer and receive a mild touch on your face, delivered with an extra heap of contempt. Ending 3 of 3, and that was it. Thanks for nothing, a game by yours truly. There are 3 endings, and you saw ending number 3. Let's have a look at the chat, because I can see some activity there, which is great, so people are still watching. Thank you kindly. I actually assumed there was a special reason to have Red Hermit in there, but I ran out of time. Yeah. You want to start at the top and then the next one and the next one. And actually my plans are to make a little game with all my patrons in there that looks like this, but has a little bit more to it than what I came up with. Of course, some people have names that work much better in games than others. I have a theory of why Red Hermit was the first one to be chosen. Yeah, it works in this genre. But I have had ideas for many of my patrons, and yeah, some on with their either their way of the games that they make, or others with their nickname that they chose, and something in between. So yeah, I still have some ideas. Imagine this is how my TV remote disappeared. Someone swung it and threw it into their magic bag. Yeah, this is also where single socks go, and batteries when you need them. It's just this bag of nothing that just eats everything up. I couldn't really complain about using nothing as a specific thing, having used empty space as an object in one of my games. Yeah, I remember, and I hate you for it, because I was too stupid, I think, to pick up nothing or the empty space. But I always like it when games are a little bit meta or a little bit clever. There was, I think, one of those text adventures, a long one back. Yeah, I think it had an T remover, or just another letter of the alphabet, and you needed to throw in objects and items, and then it would remove the T in the item's name, and then of course it would be a different thing. And yeah, I don't know the solution to the riddle or the puzzle, but you could completely mess up your game by just removing or transforming your items into something else. And I always thought that this was very clever to turn, I don't know, a T bag into an E bag, and then you could use it for something else. Yeah, something along those lines. Yeah, and this was thanks for nothing, and the game is doesn't overstay its welcome and closes itself. Just want to show you a different ending, so no worries, we're not going to read out everything again, because we already know it. I just want to show you some kind of a branching, because now that we pick no instead of you smell funny, nothing changes there. And now we say, well, we don't like it. Do you think you'll make it? Well, on second thought, tough luck, sport. Nobody asked for your opinion. Well, I just did, but that's beside the point. You came here, you got drugged by 2 scientists, and now you're on your grand quest. Size of actual quest may vary, no refunds. Yeah, I like that it's possible to have different sizes of your font in Unity, and this was one of the big reasons why I decided to make this game with Unity, because in Game Maker I just dreaded doing all these text boxes and stuff. And yeah, this is pretty much the defining moment why I picked Unity. So okay, so now we're not going to pollute our nothing with anything, because now that we've explored this huge map, that we can go by this rock slide by just taking this little detour here. And the other ending is don't using anything into a nothing, and the second ending is just picking up 1 or 2 items, I think. So everything is here is the same, I think, until we got here to Ancient Army. And now we got a different crudely drawn image. The fuel is pure and untainted, the ideal embodiment of nothing, and propels the unlikely contraption with the rocketeer up into the skies and beyond. As you watch her shoot off to a better future, you can't help but ponder how arduous your little journey would have been had you talked to other people. Still, you feel like you've been ripped off in some way. Yeah, this is, if you haven't figured it out already, is one nod to the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy, right? If they say, yeah, at the end of the first episode of the first film, why didn't they just keep riding the eagles and going to the big volcano mountain? And you can clearly tell that my nerdism with Lord of the Rings is pretty low bar when I say the big volcanic mountain. Yeah, I don't know the term, the proper term off the top of my head. But yeah, why didn't they just go on those floating, flapping birdie things? Sorry, my English is not up to snuff today, so maybe I have to have some water. So yeah, this is also the same thing here. Yeah, now if you don't interact with anything, yeah, you get the best ending, right? And if you still feel like you've been ripped off in some way, yeah, this is a throw to Monkey Island when you first meet not the sword master, but the guy who's teaching you how to fight with swords. And when I was playing Monkey Island, and I thought, yeah, now I'm going to learn how to do this action game with just the whole sword fighting. And in the end, it's just dialogue choices. And even Guybrush in the game says, once he mastered sword fighting, stands there in the hut of the sword trainer and says, yeah, I can't help it, but I feel like I've been ripped off in some way, and you probably feel the same way. So yeah, this is the big joke. So I guess you ended with what you started, nothing. Yeah, and then there's the other ending where just the rocket is polluted a little bit and then just flies off and explodes in the distance, but you still you like the color of the smoke. Yeah, because you're an idiot in my game. I actually like the art style. Oh, thank you. I know you claim you didn't. You did it that way mostly because it was quick, but really doesn't look like program art to me. Yeah, this is actually why I forced myself to draw it on paper, because on paper you just can't start with very big brushes. It's like, yeah, circle tool, rectangle tool, which is what I usually do when I do programmer arts, and you can't do this. You really have to be specific, and yeah, I can't draw limbs, I can't draw faces, so this is why my art looks like this. It's just little, yeah, meeples, I think it's what's it called, those things, those tokens, those little, yeah, abstracted tokens you play board games with. This I can draw in the time, so I think it worked because I kept things consistent. I didn't try to go photorealistic for anything. I just needed to keep going. Actually, game music is a bit loud now. Oh, I'm sorry. Probably not worth changing anymore though. Okay, so yeah. maybe we will play it in the editor in Unity, which is my cue to start Unity. There we go. And yeah, just keep it down, children. Neighbors are sleeping. Simple and great art style. Oh, thank you, and good music. What else you need? Oh, that's pretty good. Thank you so much. Yeah, as always, the person who did this knows how much you wanted to do in the first place and with how little you ended up with. But yeah, I think we all know how it goes. So, and this is after 27 minutes. We're right now in the wonderful code review part. The code review also means, me trying out Unity. So I try now to switch over to just full screen because it's not important to see my face while I'm trying to find the right words. And this way the text is a little bit bigger, I think. So yeah, this is the wonderful Unity project, and yeah, there's not much to it. Let's zoom out a little. This is the entire level. I'm so sorry, but yeah, it's not going to get any bigger than this. And as for my implementations, yeah, I come from GameMaker mostly, and probably this will be obvious in my code, but for some anti-patterns that I consciously opted for, I have a reason why I'm doing these things. Okay, so let's start here with having a look at the hierarchy. So I have a singleton that is the control game, which has the game controller script. Of course, it needs to know what's happening in the game and at what state we are. And there, if you can see here from the script, we got the text game object, which is, let me zoom out here, or you know what, canvas, let's do it like this. So yeah, this is the almost important text box, and yeah, this is where the choices go. So we have here the canvas with the panel, text and the choices. Yeah, this doesn't work too well on any other aspect ratio than 16:9. Is it 16:9? Yes, it is. So for some people it would have been cut off in the bottom, and I apologize. Good. So yeah, the game just knows the state. Got here 2 prologue, 2 intro. This 2 something means this it's just that it runs once. So it's not, for example, when we're in the prologue, when I want to switch from the prologue to the intro. It goes to intro just once and then loops over intro in this state until, yeah, the state changes. So yeah, it's a very crude state machine. And there we got the entry for the prologue, the outro, the intro, the epilogue, and of course references to the music player and the SFX player, and the confirm sound. And oh, we got even here a list of nothings. I think this is the number of things that you can have in your inventory. But yeah, when we look at the code, we know for sure. Then of course I got a text control, which is responsible for displaying what's going in the text box, for creating the choices. Yeah, and it has just a panel background and the full image. And oh, there's even a text timeout per character. So depending on how long the text is inside the box, there's it's just 0.8 seconds for each character or space that's in the text. So longer text takes longer to disappear. Yeah, it's very crude. Then I got a object that is just using an audio source that is the player for the sound effects, and another that is the player for music. So the game can play music and one sound effect concurrently. And yeah, I did this music thing, I think, in the last hour of the jam. I've never done anything with audio or sound before in Unity, so I think this might not be the right way to do things. But yeah, I didn't have time to investigate any further of how to do this better. Okay, so the canvas there is just, yeah, this big thing here to zoom out, and it has even this image here which is turned off, and the image is here in the intro. It will just change what is being displayed for the image. So yeah, the text box and this big canvas is always on top of the game. And yeah, if you play the game with anything that's not 16 by 9, yeah, the game level background, this one here, will actually peek through because the image doesn't fill the entire screen. Oh well, yeah. And then we got the event system, which I have no idea what this is, but it was created in Unity when I did the canvas. And yeah, I just kept it in because I don't know what it is. I wanted to delete it, but then I realized, well, it says standalone input module, horizontal axis, vertical axis. Yeah, input, this looks helpful, so let's better keep it in. And we got here this one object I can see, which is called spaceship. And yeah, it's got fake depth, it's got a capsule collider and an entity script. Okay, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of things that you can interact with. But first, let's have a look at scenery. And scenery is, yeah, pretty much everything that's, if I delete it, it's just the level boundaries and the crates. And yeah, everything just has a collider. Well, apart from all those little specks here of, yeah, just that you know that you're moving. If you recall, I parented the camera to the player. And if everything is white and you're just moving around because, yeah, there's the relational or, yeah, you don't see that the player is moving anyway because you don't have a frame of reference. And this is why I littered these little dots and plants and tufts of grass there about, just so that you know that when you're moving, the player with the camera, the background is moving. So yeah, just to get this across. Yeah, I had boundaries there for the level, and as you can see there, probably way too intricate in terms of collision, because I just used a polygon collider, which automatically just, yeah, split up the mesh. But yeah, this is not supposed to be very performant. So yeah, I probably could have done also with a very simple, maybe pill collider, but then you wouldn't be able to get stuck there on those little cracks there. Oh well, yeah, so that was it for the scenery. And then we got the rock slide, which is very special because if you recall just before, this NPC remembers when you've cleared out all the rocks or most of the rocks from the rock slide. And this is why I needed a way to just, yeah, organize this rock slide here, but we will get this in a bit. Then, very important, the player here, which has a sprite renderer, a rigid body, which I just used there for collisions and moving it about, and a circle collider. Well, let's zoom in there on the player. There we go. So yeah, the circle collider, which I wanted to use, or I think I'm using it, I'm not quite sure. Yeah, this is just the player's range in which when they collide in this range there with another object, it displays this object name there on top of the player. Yeah, a capsule collider, of course, for colliding with things, my fake depth script, player movement, and yeah, this is the player range. So that I could just change here the offset, of course, because you want the range not to be on the player's feet, but maybe on their eyes, which would make more sense because your awareness most likely starts from your eyes. And I got player interactions, and I think this is this thing here that just manages, yeah, if you say if I'm interacting with something, and it just should display there the name of the object that's in range. And yeah, the camera is parented to the player. And we got all those little things here you can interact with on just they're flat on the top hierarchy. That is the rock first. So this is a very special rock, and all my entities have this entity script here, and some have this story sequence script. Let's just have a look at this rock here. So the entities, of course, it has a capsule collider, makes sense. It has a fake depth that the player just flips behind it when it stands, when they stand behind it. And it is an entity, and a nice name is just what's going to be displayed here in this text box. In this case, it's interact with E or space. So this is the actual name of the item, is interact with E or space. Yeah, very straightforward. And the type, I got a enumeration of different types of entities. It is NPC that you can talk to, and a pickup, which you can, well, of course, pick up. A fixture, something you just can't look at, so it doesn't go away when you pick it up. A sign, and auto text. I'm not quite sure whether I used these or not, but yeah, just implemented more than I would need. And I got here a dialogue for examine, a dialogue for picking up, and conversation A, B, and C. Yeah, this is if you turn. At first I thought I make this whole thing reactive, so as like with other games like I don't know, Fallout, depending on what you're carrying or what the game, what state the game is in, that you have different conversations or different branches in the conversation tree. Yeah. Essentially, I'm just hard coding this. I can store up to 3 different conversations in there, or different pages of a conversation, and then just hard coded which one gets selected in what case. Yeah, allow interaction, of course, and interaction triggers end. This is only used once, I think, there with the Rocketeer, because when we start talking to this Rocketeer, it starts the interaction triggers end. Yeah, which means that the game state switches over to displaying the outro. And there's even a sound for interacting with. I think when you pick up the game board, for example, it doesn't have a sound for interacting with or anything. Apparently I don't have this interacting there actually used. Oh well. Okay, so yeah, this is essentially everything there is. For example, if you now look not at the item, but an NPC, for example, like here, the Red Hermit, this is the only NPC with branching dialogue. It says type NPC, dialogue examine, none, dialogue pickup, none, because you can't examine an NPC and you can't pick it up, but you only have a conversation. And there's a dialogue scene object, and this is I think the coolest thing that I came up with is when we have a look here at the scriptable objects, is that all my dialogues are, or yeah, pages of dialogue, as I like to call them, are implemented as scriptable objects, and we will take a look at those. Okay, so let's head over to Visual Studio and have a look at the scripts. And I think it's the best if we start with the control game, the game controller script. Wrong screen, but here we go. I think this is big enough for anyone to follow along. Okay, cool, there are still people watching this. Thank you, I just want to make sure that I'm not talking to myself. And no new activity in the chat, which is cool. So I've got your attention completely, or I got you wrapped up in this. This is not how to say things, you know what I mean. So yeah, we got a bunch of public fields. Yeah, starting off with Unity is just new for me. So I start off with making pretty much anything public and then rein things back in when I know that I won't be needing them, because yeah, it's very bad coding practice if they're just things that modify public fields in other objects that they shouldn't do. But this is game jam code, so we'll probably see something like this. So yeah, we got this enumeration of the game state. And once we start, yeah, we're just applying or just getting references to all the NPCs there. And you already know that once I'm starting to look for certain NPCs by string, this is very much hard-coded and probably not how you should do things. Then we got this game object rocks, which is just here to count the number of rocks from the rock slide we collected up, and so that we can compare it against the initial rock count. Because the thing is, the Red Hermit will know that you've picked up enough rocks if there's just a certain percentage from the initial rock count missing. So if you pick up a couple of rocks, he will say, yeah, congrats on picking up all the rocks. Then of course, yeah, feed the NPCs their default lines. Doesn't happen in this case, because yeah, I think this can go because it happens somewhere else. Yeah, some more components to the text controller, because we'll be displaying a lot of text there. Then the game state, of course, will be game state to prologue, because now we're starting. Let's start with the prologue. So the update function does, do we press the quit key? Yes, then we quit the game, and the rest is just this big switch statement. Great, this is game maker code, essentially. And we got here display interaction, start dialogue, and choices completed. Yeah, add nothing and lists nothing, and those are all the things that are in the game control. So let's have a look at this huge, wonderful switch statement where we're just switching on the game state. So as you can see, when the game starts, the first state is the to prologue state, which just, yeah, tells me something in the debug log. And we restrict the player movement, and we also restrict the player interactions, so that when players are hitting WASD, the player character that's already existing underneath all this display there won't be moved around. And if there's no entry prologue, then we just display an error log. Yeah, I'm not very consistent with this. Sometimes I have these errors here. Probably when I started programming, it's good to have still error messages, and later on the game would just crash or have a null pointer exception, or just vomit out a lot of warnings and errors there in the debug view. So yeah, this is good if you still manage to do this, but yeah, I didn't do it all the time. Okay, then we say TC. What is TC? That is the text game object that we just tell it, yeah, do the full image, because we're going to overlay an entire image that is just for the intro. And the dialogue scene current is the entry of the prologue. And the entry of the prologue is a scriptable object. And I think before doing anything when in terms of dialogues, I think it's just good to have a look at this scriptable object first. So just that you know its layout and what it is overall. Okay, so the scripts there, scriptable objects. There we go. Where do I have the definition for this scriptable object? Objects, NPCs. Did I put it here even? Yeah, I was having some troubles with compiling this, because the name of the class in my scriptable object was different than the file name, and yeah, this was a very problematic. There we go. Scene, a dialogue scene object, as I called it, and this is this scriptable object. As you can see, it inherits from scriptable object, and yeah, I created just a menu that I could in Unity very easily just say where we are, right click, create scriptable objects, dialogue scene, and then I would have here a new dialogue scene. So essentially I can have here an ID, which I don't think I ever used, or just sparingly, and the paragraph text, the thing that would be going to display it. And I got here, the most important thing is called next scene, which also is a scriptable object. So you can just daisy chain everything up, the whole dialogues. The problem here is, of course, choices by the players. I was having a lot of problems being able, or just the game to react to player choices. And you will see that everything is pretty much hard-coded. Yeah, there's a thing called choices. That's just an array. Let's put in, well, 2 choices and choice scenes. So this is some boilerplate things that you always have to do, that the first element in choices is also the first dialogue scene object, and once this gets hard-coded, it gets chosen, but otherwise, if you don't need this, it doesn't have it. Add to inventory of nothing. oh, wrong thing. Let's click. Let's have just a look at the scriptable objects, for example. Let's have a look at the first rock that you encounter. And it displays the paragraph text. You put the rock in your bag. Oops, better be careful next time. And it got here the sound effect, static 1, that it plays, and seconds until fade out is 5 seconds. Once we are here with a PC, NPC, for example, Red Hermit A1, there has been a rock slide, bummer, and the next, okay, there is no next scene, but this one here, oh wow, looks like the path is cleared now, here's a token of my gratitude, and the next scene is Red Hermit B2. What is B2? The Red Hermit hands you a priceless gem, and the next scene is empty bag. Let's head over to, I think, cutscenes, objects, empty bag. It says there's still nothing in your bag, and when there is no next scene defined, well, then the dialogue ends. Yeah, this is how I do things. I haven't used scriptable objects yet, and definitely excited to see how it's used in your project. I think Hearthstone used them for implementing their cards. Yes, I don't know much about Unity, but scriptable objects are pretty cool. Yeah, it's like a game object, but you don't have any transforms or something like this, so it doesn't clutter up your hierarchy. They don't have to exist in your hierarchy, and as you can see, you can just fill them with stuff, and it's pretty much in a way like an object where you have a template. But the good thing is, well, the good and the bad thing is that you can change it in runtime in Unity, and it still remembers what you changed, because it's just not volatile like everything else. There, like instances, it will be saved. The big thing that I also learned is that when you in-game want to change the paragraph text, for example, and then the game ends, the paragraph text will still be changed. So if you want to do anything with this, yeah, you don't write it back into the scriptable object unless that's what your intention is. But this way, yeah, you can pretty much set up stuff or data and then have the game parse it. So yeah, but we will get to this, I think, in a bit. So yeah, we start there with, where are we? Dialog scene, game controller. So yeah, this is a scriptable object. It, as you can see, just got a text error and just some more objects of itself for next scene, and the choices, those are just implemented as arrays. Yeah, you just saw how it is. And float, seconds until fade out, and 0 means it won't get faded out. So it means you have to click that it fades out. And the music volume by default there is 0.6 of, so it's 60%. So this is probably why it's a bit quiet. So game controller, there we are at the to prologue. So I'm just setting up the prologue there. So essentially after this, the player can't move. We are quite sure that we have a prologue there. We display a full image, and we display the first entry prologue. And let's have a look there. Also, the cutscenes are these scriptable objects. So intro, where are we? Prologue. Prologue 1. The year is 20XX and so on, and there is full screen image, and there's a sprite for full screen image, and the full screen image is, of course, the intro image, which I just double clicked, and Photoshop will be launched, which is just terrific. Wonderful. Yeah, we know what it is going to be displayed. Here we got this. You don't need Photoshop to, oh dear. Oh well, better kill Photoshop right now, because we don't need Photoshop. Okay, so yeah, this is the thing. Yeah, as you can see it in a nutshell, my scriptable object there for cutscenes is used for pretty much anything. for descriptions, for dialogues, for intro things, and just some fields are kept empty if they're not needed. For example, when you're talking to an NPC, you don't need, of course, an image. Back to Visual Studio. So the current dialogue scene is the entry prologue, and we just say, yeah, do dialogue scene of the current scene, and then we switch the state to game prologue, and then we are in this prologue until choice is completed and says to intro. And this is also hard-coded, so once we completed all the choices in a scriptable object chain, so that there is no other scriptable object at the end of this, yeah, daisy chain, then we switch over to the prologue then. Okay, so what is this do dialogue scene? It expects this dialog current, and what is dialog current? It's of type dialog scene object of our scriptable object. So do scene, dialog scene, scroll. And it is, of course, we're calling a function in another object. Yeah, this is fishy. So, but this is the TC, this is the text control. So let's follow the breadcrumbs. This is the control text, and the script is the text controller, and it got the exposed fields are, yeah, of course, the text box, the choices box. If you recall, scroll, oh my god. So this is the text box, and the blue text is the choices box. The panel background, of course, is this one, and the image full is the image that's either being displayed when we're in the intro or the outro, and it's going to be switched off when we're in the game, so of course that it doesn't overlay on top of the game. So scripts, there we go, text controller. So yeah, at start it just gets a reference to the game controller, just that it can talk back and forth. Also very bad coding practices when singletons are talking to each other and there's no clear hierarchy, but this is cool, right? And do we enable the choice box? No, when we start we don't. So the choice box, of course, is only enabled when we have choices. So on update, what happens if we run the counter delta time? So okay, this is just a counter that we need to clear the text box after a counter runs out. In this case, the counter gets set to a certain amount of time. That is either it's specified that I want the text box to have it fade out after 5 seconds, or as it will be calculated of the number of characters in the string. Here we go, do dialog scene. So if we don't have a dialog object, well, then we return and just say, yeah, there you didn't bring us an instance or a reference of an instance, so yeah, let's screw you. So just to make sure, the last dialog is now this dialog. This dialog is the dialog that we get, and the next dialog, as you recall, we daisy chain things up. The next dialog is the one in the scriptable object. Let's pick one. Is return it B1, is this one here, the next one, so that you always know, okay, so which one are we in right now and which one is the next one. And so, okay, hard-coded stuff. If add to inventory doesn't equal an empty string, which means, yeah, we add it to nothing, and this add to or add nothing is just the list of strings of all the things that you pick up that gets just printed out in the end. And if this dialog is not a music clip, or is a music clip in a sense, well, then we probably should start some music. So yeah, everything is lumped together in this horrible implementation of my scriptable object. So you can use it for paragraph text to display text, but you can also use it to daisy chain up scenes. You can specify an image, and if it has an image, then it will be used for intro and outro. You can say it has a sound effect, then it plays a sound effect. If it has a music clip, then it changes any music that's playing. You can even say that the music loops and at what volume it is. So yeah, it's just the one size fits all. Everything gets lumped into my wonderful scriptable object of this, yeah. Man, sorry, I'm getting distracted because my phone is constantly vibrating, because apparently I've gone viral on TikTok. Yeah, so everything is just in this one big bucket there, and the text control itself figures out. So if there is something in music, well, then we should play, maybe we want to play this music and take out what clip, should it loop, the volume, and so on. And then we just have this. Since we know the reference of the singleton, that is the game control, we just call inside the game control, we find the music player, and in this music player we hit play. So yeah, the text control essentially is responsible for playing music. Like I said, yeah, the tasks of individual objects are just all over the place. Oh, look at this, heck, all caps. So branching. So switch this dialog. So if we are in this dialog and the case is outro branch. So if we're knowing that we are in the outro branch, and you can see now we're switching this dialog ID. Let's head back over to Unity and at the cutscenes and outro, where is it? Outro branch, prologue. Oh, let's just go through all this. There we go. Outro Z branch 1. This is the only one that has an ID, and the ID is just a string. So Yes, we're already doing string comparisons, but this is cool. It's just one. Yeah, I'm not hashing strings or anything. I was running low on time, didn't know how to do things, so this is why it's just a wonderful string comparison. So if we're in the outer branch 1, then we're logging and we say, yeah, if there nothings is null. This, by the way, the nothings is the amount of things that we picked up during the game. So this is just I think. And I implemented it as an array or as a list that holds strings that it just can print out. So if we are having no nothings, that means, yeah, we didn't collect anything, then we get ending A. Choices, scenes 1. So this, the dialog, let's get back to Unity. So if we didn't collect anything, we just pick scene or element 0, which gets us the first ending. Element 1 is the second ending, and element B, element 2 is the third ending. And yeah, depending on what's happening here in this wonderful hack here, this is actually in the text controller. The text controller now is deciding where to go with the game. Wonderful, wonderful. Saves your null check. Yes, at least something like this. And I can see Nick Custer's also telling me better things to do checks against null types. But yeah, with this whole, what's it called? Ternary expressions, I didn't manage to get them to work because I wasn't quite sure where to use the question mark or how many of them. Apparently I just could have just copy pasted what he has now. But for me, I'm just doing this, yeah, the very verbose way of doing things by just, does it equal null or does this thing here equal 0? By the way, in German, null, 0 means null, so yeah, it's even better. And it's also actually spelled like null, so yeah, wonderful, wonderful. And then we do, because now we know that we are in the outro branch, we can say, yeah, let's do the full image again, switch to full image screens, and then do the dialog scene of the next dialog. And then we are in this daisy chain again. So if we're not doing branching there, or not doing the, or we aren't in this dialog, well, then we don't run the counter. And if this dialog, seconds until fade out, is greater than 0, then we run the counter, and if not, then we don't. And if full screen image is null, well, then of course the full screen image, well, wait, what? Sorry, just tripping over my tongue here, trying to figure out my own code. This dialog, of course, yeah, then it takes the sprite that we, whose reference we stuck into the scriptable object thing here. So yeah, it's this one size fits all solution. Wonderful. So the choices box enabled is false because when we are in a dialog, we don't want to display choices unless we want. And first we want to make sure that choices box is disabled, and then the choices string is empty. And then we see, so this is just house cleaning, and then we check if there are even choices in this scriptable object. And if there are, well, then of course we enable the choices box, and yeah, pick the next dialog. And if this choices length is not the length, then we say choices erased on, oh yeah, of course. This is, you have to manually make sure that the array of number of choices matches up with the choices of scenes. I'm not quite sure why I deemed this necessary, but here we are. Here we are. Yeah. Or else it's we make a choices string. And I think this is also happening down below. So essentially this means, yeah, if this scriptable object has an array of choices that is longer than 0, well, then we probably have choices and we need to format them accordingly and have the game react to them, because we can hit 1, 2, or 3 on the keyboard, and of course this corresponds to the choices, and then we need the game to know which choice we bought or we selected. And so if not, if there the length of the dialog is not greater than 0, well, then if the counter is not running, then we can say the choices box is enabled, and then we can say the choices string is press E or space. So if there aren't any choices for the player to take, the text box will always display here, this blue text will always display hit E or space to continue. Wonderful, wonderful. I can see there something going on there in the chat. Oh, hello, Lady Misty Leaf. Mistleaf. I always want to say Misty Leaf. Always struggling with ternary operators. Yeah, Thank you. So I'm not the only one. To use quotation mark before the dot when you expect it might be null. So then you can access int property. It becomes a nullable int property. Oh, okay, so you can make ints nullable. Didn't know this. So apparently I have to study the chat after this session here because I'm learning quite a lot now. So this is great. So thank you for sticking with me and looking at my code and not just ridiculing me, but offering suggestions. Thank you so much. Yeah. For starting out with Unity, I'm quite happy with what I managed to do, but yeah, it's not the best coding practices. This is clearly, it stinks of game jam code. So if this dialog is not the last dialog, we can play the sound, because otherwise, if you recall, we switched for the last dialog is this dialog and this dialog is the last dialog. I'm not quite sure why I did this thing here, but I think it's that the sound is not being triggered each step or each frame, so that we just have a sound effect if it's playing that it's just one. And so if we hit OK, and there is, it's just a dialog that we can click away that doesn't have any choices. It just displays this confirm sound that we selected. Or if there is a sound specified, then it plays the sound that we specified and not the generic sound confirm one. And then we do the text. Okay, but first we do the choices before we get the next dialog and do the text. So let's make this just that we know how many methods we have in here. So the do choice is just, yeah, if this dialog is null, then we just bounce and do the choice on the currently displayed dialog. Yeah, this is a little bit awkward. So yeah, if choice equals 1 and the choice's length is greater than 1, check if valid. Okay, so we always check if there actually is something in the array. I think this is why I switch over to Unity. This is why I have two separate arrays of choices and choice scenes, that we're just making sure that there actually is an element that we can switch to. Yeah, just to make sure that the thing won't crash, or at least not stall. And if the choice is smaller or less than 0, then nothing happens. So apparently this is completely useless. So yeah, this is just when we're doing choices that to make sure that there actually is a choice. Okay, so this is do choices. I'm not quite sure what it's doing in the context of everything, but you're free to download the source code. Of course, it's on the Ludum Dare page, and yeah, to laugh at your leisure at this code here. So okay, do the get next dialog. For some reason, it just returns next dialog, because at this point I thought, I should do some encapsulation so that the singleton of the game controller doesn't actually look at fields in the text controller. So this is some very helpful yeah, encapsulation that I didn't follow through at all. Okay, public void do next, so do the text. So essentially we just I'm doing some very simple parsing, because the nothings, this is the token to replace that everything that we have picked up in the game that gets replaced with, yeah, whatever, just a list of all the nothings that we have. Just to show you quickly that this also makes sense. This is there in the ending. There we go. It says, yeah, that something is an explosion that you will tell your grandchildren about. From the ball of fire and muted curses explodes a sheer endless stream of things. And there is the token nothings. And this nothings gets replaced with, yeah, just a printout essentially of the list that contains all the strings of the things that you picked up. And then we replace all the text in the text. It's game list nothings. We will look at this list nothings in a bit. Essentially it's just make sure that there's a comma after each entry and an end, the word end before the last one. Unless there is only one, then there's no comma, and so on and so forth. It just prints out a nice looking list. So we replace the empty text box text with a replaced string, of course, and the choices with the choices we made. Made sure that the canvas renderer is to 0, the alpha is set to 0, and then we just to fade it in over a quarter of a second, and then of course have the canvas renderer set the alpha also to 0 and also fade it in. So this is just making sure that it looks nice and fades in Wonderful. Always time for nice polishing stuff like fading in text boxes. Great. So make choices string. So of course the out string, it returns a string of the choices that we have. And for each string in choices, yeah, we just edit and add an. So this is just for the display, that it just prints the number. So 1, of course, it prints the first choice is 1 period and then the string of the choice, and then gets a new line, and of course the next one is 2, and so on and so forth. I never have more than 2 choices, so yeah, just returns this as a nice string. And clear box. Wow, what does this do? Well, it fades out the box, the panel background, and it clears those 2 references. Wonderful. And do full image. Yeah, if do it, then it enables image full, and if not, it disables it. Yeah, this is just used, I think, by the global game control. Great. So this is the game controller that just tells you when to start a dialogue. It tells the text control to do a dialogue scene, and then just picks out and parses the text and what are the choices, and just formats them nicely and displays them, but also does some business logic, because why not keep things all over the place. And the choices are completed, which means I just picked something, or the choices are displayed completed. I think this is what this means. Choices completed means that they are have faded in, and I think there's a grace period of 1 or 2 seconds that you just can't accidentally hit a text box or advance a text box that's not finished fading in, because of course you couldn't read the text by now, and this is why this choice is completed there is queried. Okay, so if we interact 1, then of course the choice we took is 1, and the dialogue scene current is, we just say the text box, whatever the next dialogue is, like I showed you before. Encapsulation, we just pick, it returns the reference to the scriptable object of the next text box dialogue. So choice 1, choice 2, choice 3, and so on. We're just picking one of the four possible choices. And if there is no scene current or there is no next choice or follow up in the daisy chain, it came to an end, well, then the sequence is complete and we return true, else we return false. And it says choices completed. Also, okay, so this choice is completed there, it's called choices completed because all the choices in this sequence of events have been completed. And apparently this text controller there, where I said it waits to allow an input after the thing has faded in entirely, I think I wrote this code and haven't looked at it in 2 weeks, and I'm already a little bit confused. Shows you about, tells you all you need to know about the quality of this code. But I always want to make sure that you can't click away something that hasn't been fully faded in, and this is why I always have this grace period of 1 or 2 seconds or 1.5 seconds, something like this, that you can click text away you haven't seen. Wonderful. And the add nothing is just take the string and add it to the list of strings, to the list nothings. It just puts the string to it. And here is, like I said, this list nothings just makes an array out of this list. And then if you just have one thing in your array, it just returns the name of this thing. If you have 2 things, then it says thing 1 and thing 2. And for anything more, it just keeps adding them up with a comma, and the Oxford comma for the win is happening here. Then we are here just having the return, the final, the penultimate thing and the final thing, and there's a comma and an end between it. Microphone is down. Thank you very much. Let's bring it up here, wiggle it around, and we have it up. I am not quite sure why this is happening. By the way, it's not allowed to take exclusive control of anything. The levels are up, playback device running even when, I don't know. I don't know why. Someone DM TikTok to let him know that the mic needs to be adjusted. Thank you so much. What also helps, what we did last time was have a little emoji of a speaker there in the text or in the chat that I know, I should be wiggling the levels there. But I hope it's cool now. So this is just listing, printing out a string. And this is what the game controller does. Let's not save it. I don't want to break things. So you can see pretty much, as I like to call it, the business logic is happening in the game control and in the text control. but we also be interacting with NPCs, and also the player here has some cute little stuff going on. Sprite render, of course, it displays a sprite. Rigid body 2D, yeah, it's being a rigid body so that we can move it around. Circle collider is not being used, I think. Capsule collider for collisions, yeah, also very, very self-evident. And I think let's have a look at the fake depth now, because it just says here is moving and Y offset. And the fake depth script sits on all the things that are being displayed, I think. Let's zoom up on, for example, this guy here has a fake depth. This one here has a fake depth. And everything there, if it's just a sprite there sitting, has a sprite render and a fake depth. And yeah, if it has a capsule collider, so that you can, yeah, just flip behind it, or just, yeah, move behind it. So everything gets a fake depth. What does it do, and why is it important that it has an is moving yes or no? I like this little script. Where is it, to quote Duke Nukem? Scripts, probably it's in the scripts. Fake depth. Yeah, it is very simple. So at the start, it gets the sprite render component, and if it's not moving, then we set the sorting order just once to 10,000 minus the rounded version, or the rounded value of the position, plus the offset times 100. So you can do this only, I think, 32, yeah, essentially until it flips over the integer. So yeah, just if you got a huge level or a huge map, this won't work. But this is why it's important that if it's moving, like the player, for example, then we do this on each update. So on each update we just rounding this and changing essentially the sorting order of the player. And if it's not moving, well, of course the sort order won't change. So this is why it's important that it's moving or it's not moving, because optimization. And yeah, this is pretty much everything there. And so that it's not happening to everything all at once at each frame. It's just wanted to make sure that I can at least discern between things that are moving and are not moving. And of course the offset is for players that you always want. The offset should be at a position that at the base of things. So as a player, you can be in front of it, and right now at this point it already should flip. So this was just a little bit of trial and error that I could use here. This Y offset value here. So entity script. This is where things get interesting, because yeah, this is just for all entities. Apart from the player, so if it's an NPC, or if it's a pickup, or if it's, does this have an entity script? No, but this has an entity script. Yeah, it's just, I think it's just, the rocket ship by itself is a fixture here of type. So we got yeah, just an enumeration of NPC, pickup, fixture, and a sign. I think if I intended to implement signs like in Minecraft, or in pretty much your run-of-the-mill JRPG where you just can read signs. Yeah, let's have a look at this. Where are we? Entity script. The entity randomizer, by the way, is also something that I came up with very on very short notice, but I like how hacky it is. So yeah, the entity script, it has a lot of dialogue scene objects, because if you examine something, if you pick up something, or in conversations, you got 3 slots for conversations, and have, yeah, the game control pick which one. Yeah. And of course you can allow an interaction with this, or the interaction triggers ending, as I just showed you before. And there's even an audio clip if you interact with it. So when you start with it, it just gets the game object go. Yeah, game object. Okay, so the game object. The control game there in the root. Again, we're just looking up objects by name. Wonderful. But at least, yeah, I made here a little check to be sure that there's a game object present. Yeah, and then we just store references to it, and the collider move and the collider range, which each object that has something should have a collider, the capsule collider usually, that the player just, yeah, can collide with it. And of course it has a sprite render also. Very, very self-evident. And the body is itself. It's just the rigid body component. So we got the box collider or the circle collider, pretty much anything that, yeah, we just need. Because the range, I think this is why I had this circle collider, but I'm not using it I think just visible where players in what range they can see an object and then interact with it. Okay, so the dial we got here, this is in the start, and nothing happens in the update, so only when there's an interaction happening. So I think the player just triggers this interact in the dialog scene object, or not in the dialog scene object, in any entity. So when the player just hits space or E, it triggers interact no matter what this object is. So we count their interactions because why not? Maybe something acts differently on the second interaction. I'm not quite sure if I'm using this. But first, the return dialog is null. We want to set it to null. So, if there is a sound for interaction, well, let me just show you. So if this interaction here, in this case, there is no interaction for the spaceship, so this sound interact has no audio clip. But if it has, well, it's nice that we play it. So if it has an interaction, then we just get the sound effects player and play this. Then we switch on the type, and afterwards we, if the interaction triggers the ending, well, then we switch the game state in the game controller to outro. Wonderful. So we're switching the global game state in a random script that's called entity script. Wonderful. So what are those? Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. It's a microphone. Cool. Okay, thank you. So so we switch on the type. So I just made this very straightforward enumeration there, NPC, pickup, fixture, and so on. So if it's a pickup and we interact with it, it means we can destroy it. I'm not checking if you're allowed to pick it up or anything. We just say in this game you can pick up anything if it's a pickup. Then of course we destroy it, and the return dialog is the pickup, the field that we put here, this scriptable object that we put here for dialog pickup. Or in this case of the spaceship, we can't pick it up because it's a fixture, we can only examine it. So else it is examine. So if it's of a type NPC, then we start the dialog, and start dialog in the game, I just closed it before, is that we just shooting off this whole cascade that, we're telling the text control, what dialogue we're on, if there are any choices and so on that we just had. So this is what happens there in this entity script there. So everything is an entity apart from the player. So where is my player there? Because the player got some more objects. Of course, the movement script, this was the first thing that I did, player movement. It's also very self-evident, just we get the game controller of game, that is the overall, of course, the singleton and the maximum speed, and just a vector 2 for the movement in, the move speed, and the always a nice diagonal fix because if we're moving up and left, that the player's speed wouldn't just be too high. But I think I'm using this. Yes, I'm using it here. So just at start, we just get references to the game control and references, of course, to the rigid body 2D of the player. And then on update, if movement for the player is allowed, of course, we get the usual input of the horizontal and vertical axes, or else movement in. Otherwise, we just always set the vector to 0. I don't think it's necessary to do this each time, but I had a problem when I was moving a player to the left and then starting a dialogue, and then of course movement wouldn't be allowed, and then the player would still be moving because its movement in still held those values there. And fixed update, of course, since we're moving a physical thing, a rigid body, which means, of course, movement in. If x is greater than 0 and y is greater than 0, well, it probably means that we're moving diagonally, and then we just multiply it with 2/3 of the value just to make sure that the amount of speed is in always the same direction, or not same direction, the same speed. And then we do this wonderful move position. Apparently this is how you do things. I just copy pasted it from a YouTube tutorial, and I want to say I wrote it myself because I saw it in a YouTube tutorial and then I just typed it up from the screen. So this is This is how my player movement works. It's barely enough, but it works, at least for this. There's, as you've seen, there is absolutely nothing in terms of momentum or movement speed up and speed down and slidiness factor. It's very simple. It behaves like a block in my very first basic games. Okay, so this was player movement. Next thing we have is the player range, and this is, their player's perception. You can see here, of course, it needs a reference to the game control, and then we got player colliders, and there's a circle collider and a capsule collider, and I'm not quite sure why I'm using this, but we will see. The range is just the radius around the player, and the offset and the current object. So if there is any object, if we are colliding with another capsule collider or any other collider in an object, we will see, or we will check if it's an entity, and if yes, we will display its name there. I think this is what this is doing, player range. Let's have a look at this. So at the start, we just make sure that we got objects in range is just a new array of a length of 11. So there is no instance in the game where there are more than 10 objects in range. So since we only just picked the first one, I think this is rather a moot point. And the offset, of course, is in this case a vector 3. That like I said, that we're not at the middle of the sprite, but instead of maybe there of the eyes, or if maybe of this little walking cane with this ball there, that I can just move around the origin of where this is going to be. And update is called once per frame. Thank you, very helpful comment. So I got some debugging stuff there, draw a line that I just know how long this range is, or that we're starting there from this offset there, and then of course how long the range is. I wanted to draw a circle, and fun fact that I knew in Game Maker, you just say draw circle, from this is the origin and this is the radius. Not so in Unity. I thought it would be just easy for debugging things to draw a circle, and now you have to do some, either way, you just draw a bunch of lines in a circle, or you start using Bezier curves, and instead I thought, I'm not bothering with this. As soon as there's a pi involved and not the eatable kind, I'm out. I'm out. So I'm just drawing a line there at the range, and this was indication enough for me that I knew how big something was. So overlap circle non-alloc. What the hell? If there is any object in range, we're just seeing if there are results. So we're removing here, before doing anything, the players colliders, because I had no idea, since we're checking if there is any kind of collider in range there. Of course, it was always colliding with the player itself, and this took me quite a while to figure out what the problem was. It was always colliding with itself. And this is why the first thing is that I do, if we already have some results there, we pick out if a collider object's in range. If C is null, then it's cool, but as long as there's a component that in itself, that there's a kind of in the current object that it's colliding with its own collider, then we just take it out of this of the results, essentially. So this is how this thing there is happening. Horrible, I know, horrible, but I mean, it worked in the end, and this is all I cared for. It's a game jam code after all. So this is what's in range, and player interactions now is to interact with the object that is in range. Player interactions, we just have this text here and the panel image, and this is just this floaty new text thing that's on top there of the player. So at start, we get a reference to the game control as always, and get the component of the game controller, and the range is the range script. So this is the script. Okay, so on update, text of course is empty, and the panel image is not enabled. So each time I'm going to switch off now this, sorry for moving my mouse so erratically, I shouldn't be doing this. So each time we just deactivate this label here on top, unless of course we are interacting or have an interactable object in range. Entity script, this is wrong one here, player interactions, there we go. So if the current object that is in range is not null, then there is an object in range. So the entity is the current object that's in range. The text is the nice name of the entity. Just to recall, this is the entity script that we're checking, where I entered the entity name and the text that's going to display it and so on. So yeah, this is the nice name of this thing we're colliding with, and yeah, we're displaying the panel image. This little stroke of paint there, that's just being used as a background. And if the player is allowed interactions, well, then we are checking if the interact one button was actually pressed. And if it was, then we do in the game control. This is why we need a reference to the game control. Then we, inside the game controller, we say, yeah, let's do the interaction. Where were we before? Of this entity. And as you recall before, usually this means to destroy it and add the string to the player's inventory, or if it's an NPC, just kick off this whole, yeah, like I said, cascade or daisy chain of scriptable objects. Let's have a look at the chat. I remember writing basic program on my ZX81 to draw a circle and being confused why the loop counter didn't match the proper degrees. It worked anyway. Drawing circles, apparently, I'm not quite sure why this is not a standard debug function in Unity, but apparently it's not, and everybody has to come up, essentially, almost literally reinvent the wheels for themselves. These modern computers can draw circles more or less instantly, yeah, but apparently you have to tell them each little segment of what they should be doing. Okay, so this was the player interaction. So essentially it just says if there is something, if there is an object in range, display its name here, and if the player interacts with it, just run its interact method. Okay, but there was still one thing that is, no, that was everything. That was everything. So, and we got here story sequence. I think this is not what I've touched before. And this, let me have a look where this even occurs. But essentially it kicks off a story sequence is just a, where is it? Where is it again? I think, is there a story sequence in the text? Yeah, essentially it just hits off a certain, it holds a number of those little scriptable object pages, essentially. I think the Red Hermit has this story sequence script. Yeah, this was the only way for me to somewhat affect or have the player affect the outcome of a dialogue. As you recall, once we picked up the rock slide, the NPC said, yeah, good job, here's your reward. And this story sequence just takes a number of scenes, as it's called scenes, and starts with the current scene. And then at each, we validate each scene and make sure that it's greater than what's in the array, or the length of the array. And yeah, each time, let me just make this smaller there. We get the scene, we set the scene, we get the first scene, we get the next scene, and make sure that, or check if it is the last scene, and so on. So essentially, yeah, it's just managing to see all those, what's happening in those scriptable objects. Like I said, those are pages. And I think this is half implemented because this is what I started with. But then I switched over to each scriptable object having just the reference to the next scriptable object and so on. I think this is what's happening here, and I just wanted to make sure to validate each scene, that there's actually a scene connected to what's in the array. And arrays are incredibly fast, but they're also incredibly, you have to really make sure that you're not running out of the array index. So yeah. And I think this is what's happening here, and it didn't quite work. So yeah, this is yeah, half-assed, half implemented, and so on. So, but I'm not quite sure where it's happening that the player, once they are talking with the NPC, Red Hermit NPC, where there is this, excuse me, where it's happening that, yeah, how does this NPC know that we picked up enough stones? You can see here that we got dialogue conversation A and dialogue conversation B. So A and B is here. A means there has been a rock slide, and B is, oh wow, looks like you cleared the path, and B2 is, yeah, just a continuing. So the next scene is none on 1, and the next scene on B is of course this one here. But yeah, how does this NPC know that we picked up enough rocks? And I think I did this somewhere where it shouldn't belong, and my guess is that it happened somewhere here in the control game script, because we didn't quite or we haven't finished looking up in the game control script at this huge switch statement here. Okay, so when the game first starts, we're moving over to the prologue. Then we are here in this wonderful prologue until we run out of choices, or yeah, links in the chain, so that there is no further prologue slide in a sense. And then of course, then let's go to the intro. By the way, the prologue, yeah, just that you know where's this the point between what's the prologue and what's the intro. The prologue is let me show you with the images. The prologue is just this thing here with the world, and this is the whole backstory, and the actual intro is here we are talking to those two strange scientists. So this is the intro and this is the prologue, just so you know where I made the designation what belongs where. So once we are in the intro, we still constrict the player's movement and their interactions, and the entry intro is null. So if this is null, we just get an error message which tells you just Phil, you just forgot to link up, to hook up something. And then of course, yeah, we just start here. We say the next thing is the first thing, the entry point for the intro. Once the intro is completed, we switch over to roaming, and this is the actual game. So state to roaming, and this to roaming happens here. So we allow now player movement and we allow now player interactions, and the state of the game is roaming. So, and here this is what's happening here. This is this ugly thing. So each step, essentially, we count the number of rocks. And there's even a rock. Oh, I implemented. We don't do this each frame. Apparently, I implemented this cooldown here, so that the rock cooldown. Where did I specify the freaking rock cooldown? So yeah, so that it doesn't happen each time, but we're still making sure that yeah, we're counting the time that has passed. And if the rock's cooldown is smaller or less than 0, well then it has run out and we can do the countdown again. So where is this elusive rock cooldown? So it's just 1F. So each second we check, we count the number of rocks in this game. If it makes sense or not, we just keep on checking those rocks. So yeah, we once a second we create a new array of rocks. Oh man, the garbage collector is loving it. And we're just looking at the string of rock slide rock. And this is the reason why we put this here in this hierarchy of this game object that's just called rock slide. Yes, and once we found this rock slide or rock slide rock in this game, I think I just used a tag now. Yeah, this is what I did. Okay, so because first I just looked at the name rock slide and then looked at all of the children there, but I wisened up at least somewhere during this. And each rock has a tag that is rock slide rock. So I'm just looking at everything that's tagged as a rock slide rock, because it's different to this very special rock here, which is untagged. Man, this is really over the place, isn't it? So yeah, we just make it an array out of everything that has this tag there. So if the length is less or equal to 3, well, then we can say, yeah, if there are less than 3 rocks remaining, yeah, you pretty much cleared up the whole rock slide, so it's chances are that you can make it through. So helped with rock slide is now true, and we don't need to count the rocks after we counted them every second to make sure that the player really collected them all, because now the game knows that we helped the hermit with the rock slide. And here we change the NPC's line, hard-coded, wonderful. So NPC Red Hermit dialogue conversation A equals conversation B. So essentially, Each NPC always has what's in slot conversation A, unless something changes what's in slot B to be in slot A, but it only runs what's in slot A. This, ladies, gentlemen, and unicorns, is my wonderful implementation of branching, and you can see how hacky it is. And this is when I run out of out of time, but still wanted to have some kind of NPCs. Yeah, if you look at Mr. Scully here, where is Mr. Scully? I'm keep selecting the canvas now. Mr. Scully has only this conversation A. And conversation B, just why does it have a conversation B? I'm not quite sure actually where this happens, because everything just has, okay, now I'm all alone. Yeah, it never triggers. If you've played the game, it never triggers this conversation B, because I didn't have time to implement this. And if we have a look at the pony, it only has a conversation A. So it means it's very linear. It's not actually a conversation. It's just firing off a couple of dialogue scenes, pony A1, pony A2, and then next scene is nothing. So yeah, nothing really is happening there. But it works, and this is everything that's happening here in roaming. But we skipped a couple of cases now. There is two dialogue and dialogue. So once we are in a dialogue, yeah, we need to restrict the player's movement, and the player can't interact anymore, because now we got this dialogue box open, and we switch, of course, the state to dialogue. And so if we keep, or we remain in this state dialogue until the choices have been completed. And this is what we checked before, that if the player clicked something, or yeah, in the choices, and then we know, okay, the player committed to a choice, then we can clear the box and do whatever needs to be done with the choices, which happens in there, and then we switch over to roaming. So yeah, the dialogue is over, the player can roam again, unless of course we are in the outro. And how do we know that we are actually starting the outro? Because this one character there has, in its entity script, has this boolean here set to true, that interaction triggers ending. It's cut off here, but once you interact with something that has this flag there set to interaction triggers ending, then the game says, yep, we're now in the outro. I think this trigger happens not there in the game controller, but in the text controller, because of course it's everywhere. So okay, we're in the outro. That means, yeah, player can't move, player can't interact anymore. And if entry auto equals null, yeah, Phil, you were stupid and you forgot to hook up the right object. Get the world state for the correct ending. So rock slide rocks. Okay, here now we are checking again this rock slide thing here, just making sure that the rock slide count is less than the initial count. So at this point we can make sure that, yeah, we helped with the rock slide. So it adds, because why is this happening here? If you recall, every time we add something or we pick something up, it gets added to this list of strings that the game just keeps telling you at the end. But there's no indication for the rock slide rocks, because let me just show you real quick so that I'm not getting you overly confused. So this rock, for example, if you pick up this rock, it says here, where is it? Pick up, then it runs the first rock dialog scene object. Scribble objects, dialog scene objects, first rock. And so this is a pickup, and add to inventory of nothing is just this string here, a specific rock. All those rocks here don't have a little scriptable object page by themselves. So if you pick them up, it's not a string that gets added, a rock, Dwayne Johnson, a rock, Alcatraz, and so on. So the game doesn't know whether you picked it up or not. But once we know that we triggered the ending, the player won't be collecting any more of those rocks. So this is out of the question. So now we can make sure, or now we can count how many rocks are there still remaining. So if we helped with the rock slide, which we said before there when we were interacting with Red Hermit, or just keep every second we checked. So if we helped with the rock slide, then we add in this, as soon as we start the outro, we add this line, an entire freaking rock slide. If not, if the rock count is just 80% of the initial count of rocks, then it says a few rocks, and there are just a few rocks you picked up. Or if you picked up 50%, it says a whole bunch of rocks. And if you picked up everything but didn't talk to Red Hermit again, then it says way too many rocks for any purpose for some reason. But I don't think that this gets ever triggered, because helped with rock slide, as soon as you picked up I think just 50-60% of the rocks, I think this is also true. In other words, the last else if probably will never run, as I can see it right now. So yeah, the current scene is the entry point of the outro at this point. And yeah, just make sure that the state, of course, is also the outro. And then we just do the outro until we run out of chains to the outro, and then it's the epilogue. And the epilogue is, again, where do I change from outro to epilogue? Man, I have too many names for outro and intro. So cutscenes, just to make sure. Yeah, outro end and outro branch. And as soon as the ID is outro branch 1, if you recall, I was hard coding this choice here between outro 1, 2, and 3, and the prologue or the epilogue. Where is this one? Oh, the epilogue is just where it says thanks for nothing. It's just the very last thing where it says thanks for nothing, and as soon as you hit anything, then you completed all the choices and the application quits. And this is everything to my game. This actually took a little bit longer than I anticipated, because I thought, yes, it's not much code. But yeah, trying to make everything as coherent sounding at least as possible. It took me over 1 hour and 10 minutes to lay out how my game works. So yeah, this was the code review and the game itself of, let's switch it back, of my wonderful game, Thanks for Nothing, my very first finished Unity game, my very first Unity game that has audio in it, and probably way too many things that I did wrong. Let's switch over with a very cool transition, so now you can see me again. Yes, I'm still here. I still got my shirt on. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, bumping the microphone, always a good sign. Thank you so much for watching and following along. I hope this was interesting. And from the just looking at the chat, thank you so much for pointing me in the righter directions of where I was going. Yeah, but overall, I have to say I found Unity is once I really started to get into the mind frame of object-oriented stuff, I found it very fun to work with. But what I'm still struggling with is proper design. In GameMaker, it's perfectly fine to have just this huge one block of code and a couple of singletons that keep managing everything. And you know, yeah, this thing runs once a step and you're good. But good thing / bad thing with Unity is, of course, you can run methods in other objects. You really have to be very thorough and very thoughtful about scoping, of course. Because as you've seen with this abomination here, yeah, there is no proper structure to the code. If you want to do some debugging, you can't be sure where in the hierarchy what is modifying what. As you can see, the text control manages or changes things in the overall game state. Sometimes. But not all of the times. So yeah, even at this very small scope, it's already horrific to debug. And yeah, I'm not quite sure of how to do things properly, because once you start messing around with some kinds of event systems going up and down, then yeah, the garbage collection, I've heard people warning me about that. Yeah, sometimes don't keep instantiating objects, because at a certain point, of course, the garbage collection will step in, and then you have a spike in a frame drop spike, and so on and so forth. So yeah, probably have read more than necessary about Unity, in a sense that I'm overly fearful that I'm doing things wrong, because I know what you should be minding and where you should be really cautious about not doing this and not doing that. And this is really, really to my detriment, because some people are just dive in, how to move a character about, copy, paste, yeah, it works, and keep adding, and then they just naturally get better, and I'm just overly worried that I'm doing things wrong. But with this, at least I know where I should be looking at and how to improve things. Yeah, let in a sense, to keep data and code separated, as we're all taught, and not to have strings, literal strings in my classes. But with the scriptable objects, yeah, like I said, those are very powerful, and I really like those because, like I said, you can modify them at runtime, parse them, and yeah, they're just little blocks of data. You just keep doing, just keep to have things organized, and you can. Yeah, you don't have to worry about clogging up your hierarchy by just keeping instantiating game objects, but you're only interested in the data they hold. Okay, so let's have a look at the chat. And Sihan Emre Özden says, hello Phil, and how are you? Thank you, I'm doing fine. How are you? I hope everyone else that is still watching. 14 viewers for this horrible stream here. Thank you so much. And let's have a look at what I missed there in the chat. Phil, do you have any idea when the postmortem comes out? Which one? I have way too many in production right now. By the way, one thing is, well, I think we're finished here now with the thanks for nothing thing, so that I can just switch over to webcam full, as I called it there in my OBS studio. Yes, the Ludum Dare 42. As always, I'm working on it and I want to do some reshoots because I was having troubles with the green screen, so I need yeah, and also the acting was not quite, and the focus was a little bit out, and next week I got off next week, so I can do some reshoots of some stuff, because doing reshoots on something that you wrote or recorded almost a year ago sounds nuts, but for me it saves me a lot of work, because otherwise I would need to do a lot of cutting out of rotoscoping myself, and it just takes so long, and it doesn't feel like you're making any progress, and actually faster to devote a whole evening to do a reshoot of one scene and then have a green screen that I can work with, and that saves me so much time. In short, yeah, it's a film by its own. If you don't know, it's this whole film noir part, or it's a film noir. It's of 15 to 20 minutes, completely film noir, that's set in the 1940s Los Angeles. I'm in a trench coat and a hat doing all the different characters there. Got even props, everything. Bought stock footage from some stock footage databases, stock music to sound like 40s music. Yeah, essentially it's a film, and this is inside an already lengthy, I think 30 minutes long LD documentary, just interspersed between them, just to reflect on how things are going. Yeah, and I completely overscoped, but still I also want to have an LD post-mortem out there for anyone who's still interested in those, because yeah, even myself, I'm not too happy with how long it takes me to have a video finished. And this is why I decided to start on the LD45, the most recent Ludum Dare, and I already finished the fourth or the third draft. And drafting means, yeah, just write everything that happened. It's like a little it's a book report in a sense, or a report of anything. And then yeah, I just go over it page by page and try to really fix everything. And as you can see here for my script, I really need 3 or 4 drafts. And with this one, I kept the scope down substantially, which means that there aren't not as many funny bits as usual, because usually I just have this idea for this one thing, and I said, yeah, wouldn't it be cool to jump through a portal into a different dimension, and Cthulhu will tell me to finish my game, as it was with Power MT, for example. And then I have a different joke here and a different joke there, and each takes a long time to set up, and yeah, essentially produce, and everything is, even if it's just half a minute, it takes weeks of preparations. And with Ludum Dare 45, I also have something like this, but it's more or less 5 different scenes with one setup, if this makes sense. I want to spoil anything, so, but yeah, because this game I try to make something funny for a change. Comedy, in a sense, will be the theme of Ludum Dare 45. So yeah, this is what I'm working on currently. I want to have Ludum Dare 45 postmortem finished before continuing in yeah, with more energy and more time devoted to Ludum Dare 42, because it's so late already. A couple of weeks later don't matter anymore if I can put out something else. And will there be guest actors? Frank asked, and yes, I have a guest actor. You might have seen her in my previous Ludum Dare. Yes, she'll be acting as a guest actor. And yeah, I don't want to spoil anything, but yes, there will be guest actors also. Me, and me for maybe me in 4 roles, because apparently I'm so wonderful to work with. This is why I'm playing 4 roles. But yeah, this is why I got so many glasses and different hats, that you can really discern between different versions of me. And yeah, the other thing that I started working on concurrently is, like I said, I wanted to increase my output a little. I recently played The Sinking City. If you haven't heard it, it's a detective game, also set in this Lovecraftian world. It's by Frogwares, who do usually those Sherlock Holmes detective adventures. Yeah, and it was their first big departure of this huge open world city that's set in the 1920s, somewhere in Massachusetts. And yeah, the thing is, I enjoyed playing it. The game is, well, it's way from perfect, but it has a lot and as I was playing it throughout the game, I thought, yeah, I know this name, or I know what they did there, because this was the one character in this one Lovecraft story. And I thought, man, there is so many little nods to Lovecraft. So maybe wouldn't it be interesting to have a video on all the things that I realized that, yeah, this is actually a character from this Lovecraft story, but they used it differently. And while I was was researching, because you have this huge city, the city map, and there's every street and every lane has a name, and many names are relating to Lovecraft stories in one way or another, or to Lovecraft the main himself or his surroundings. And I thought this might be interesting for other horror weird stories, sci-fi nerds just to nerd out about. The other thing is that I noted about this game was that a lot of things didn't match up. There are a lot of anachronisms of things that aren't possible when the game was set in Massachusetts in the 1920s, because since I started doing the postmortems, and I'm just a huge research nerd. Seriously, I nerd out on the nerdiest little details. For example, big pet peeve of mine is fonts. I like my typefaces and fonts, and use them a lot, and was very much into it like 20 years ago, where I, for some reason, I still can identify certain fonts by name. And the thing is, when you have a game like The Sinking City, where there's a lot of text and a lot of posters out there, and knowing myself, I can identify and say, yeah, this font can't be used in this place because the font was designed in 1945 or something like this. And there are a lot of things that didn't quite match the time period, and I think it's always nice just start nitpicking something that you really enjoy. So yeah, I hope this will be of interest to any of you, but I'm having a lot of fun finding out about all those little things, because I recorded the whole gameplay. So I'm just stepping through my recorded footage, and then just researching and making sure that everything or what doesn't match up to the time period they're depicting. It's not out of spite, more out of love, because I found the game, as depressing as it is, strangely evocative, and this is another project that I'm doing. Oh my god, for how long has the microphone been down? But I hope at least you could hear anything that I said, the most important thing. What happened to the sound? Sorry, I don't know what's happening with the sound. Sometimes when I'm streaming, it just goes down for no reason, because I'm not doing anything. I even unplugged my headphones because I thought it might have to do something with the headphones. I don't know. I don't know what's happening with the sound. But as soon as I fiddle there with the sound levels, it fixes. Okay, you need my tool to get a notification. Yeah, probably. I need an integration somewhere in OBS Studio, just a huge flashing thing, or you know what would have helped even further is that this freaking levels down thing isn't happening at all, that I need a tool to figure out why this is happening. I don't know, it's like I said, I'm suspecting that OBS has something to do with it, because when I'm recording voiceover it never happens, but only when I'm streaming, and I thought it was some kind of context change maybe, but yeah, who knows. Scroll up after the stream, I posted something. Oh, okay, so yeah, I will. Oh, there's quite a lot happening there in the chat. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm so grateful that everyone is here each Sunday when just this random dude here is streaming about random stuff that kept him busy the week or the week before. So yeah, I'm very grateful that you all spend some time of your day just listening to me talk. Okay, so we're at almost 2 hours of this stream, so I think I can call it a day, because I still got, full disclosure, I still got some apple pie from my mother-in-law, and I'm very much looking forward to having a slice of pie for myself. So having a quick look at the chat, if anyone still wants to know something or has something to add. But otherwise, yeah, all I can say is, again, thank you so much for hanging out with me, for telling me about stuff that I didn't know, which there is a lot, especially when it turns to Unity. And yeah, and I hope to see you next week when I'm doing another stream. I have no idea about what, but same bad time, same bad channel. Also, always stay hydrated, have a sip of water now and then, about 2 liters a day. So yeah, I'm always preaching, but I'm hardly manage to do it, so yeah. And with that being said, let me just switch over there, that I can have my OBS transition already lined up. And with that said, have a wonderful Sunday. Again, thank you so much for hanging out and talking in the chat and being part of the community. It really means a lot to me. And yeah, and enjoy the rest of your Sunday, because I know that I will. Cheers.